Few plants in human history have been as controversial or as misunderstood as cannabis. Demonized by some, deified by others, this ancient herb stands at the crossroads of contemporary debate, its true nature obscured by layers of political agenda and cultural bias. But long before prohibition, long before recreational use became the dominant narrative, cannabis held a sacred place in numerous spiritual traditions across the ancient world. From the banks of the Ganges to the temples of Egypt, initiated priests and mystic seers recognized this plant not as an escape from reality, but as a key that unlocks hidden dimensions of perception. The herb that opens the third eye also awakens the forgotten eyes within our palms. What these ancient practitioners discovered, and what modern enthusiasts often experience without understanding, is the peculiar tingling, the unmistakable vibration that arises in the hands when cannabis enters the body's system. This sensation is not merely increased blood flow or random neural firing, but the activation of what Eastern mystery traditions called the Chakras, 7 distinct energy centers embedded within our hands. Throughout millennia, across civilizations separated by vast oceans and mountains, this singular truth has been preserved among the initiated. When properly approached, cannabis serves as a catalyst that awakens dormant sensory capabilities within our palms. These capabilities remain largely forgotten by modern society, which has reduced our hands to mere instruments of touch and manipulation. This knowledge was guarded zealously by mystery schools and passed down through whispered initiations. The secrets of the Chakras, the energetic centers that reside within our hands, remained hidden from the uninitiated. Why? Because to activate these centers is to fundamentally alter one's perception of reality itself. What you experience as unexplained tingles, warmth, or vibrations in your hands during cannabis use represents the first whispers of an awakening, the initial stirring of perceptual abilities that modern civilization has forgotten, but ancient wisdom traditions meticulously documented. What you will discover in the next few minutes may transform not only how you understand your relationship with cannabis, but how you perceive the invisible architecture of consciousness itself. The journey we embark upon today bridges Eastern mystical traditions, esoteric anatomy, and the profound relationship between this sacred plant and expanded awareness. Are you ready to perceive with more than just your conventional senses? The wisdom of hand vision stretches back to the earliest recorded human civilizations. In ancient India, the science of hasta mudra, sacred hand gestures, was developed not merely as symbolic movements, but as technologies to direct subtle energy through specific channels within the hands. The Vedic seers described the hands as microcosms of the entire universe, with each finger corresponding to an elemental force and each intersection of lines representing cosmic junctures where divine energies converge. The Sanskrit texts of the Upanishads speak of Nadi Hastam, the rivers of the hand, describing with remarkable precision what we now understand as the Chakras. These are not casual metaphors but detailed energy maps. The Tantric traditions of Kashmir Shaivism preserved elaborate practices involving hand sensitization, often incorporating hemp preparations known as vijaya, victory, to enhance the practitioner's ability to perceive the subtle energy currents. In the 9th century CE manuscript Hasta Vidya Prakasha, the sage Markandeya writes, "When the divine herb opens the inner eye, the hand becomes as the night sky, each line a constellation, each mound a planet, and in the center of the palm, a universe unfolds." Meanwhile, across the Himalayan divide, Taoist alchemists in ancient China developed their own sophisticated understanding of hand energetics. The system of Shou-Gong, hand cultivation, described meridian pathways that connected the fingertips directly to the internal organs and energy centers of the body. The Taoist text, The Secret of the Golden Flower, describes specific cannabis preparations used in conjunction with hand meditation techniques to make visible the invisible currents of qi. These practices were integral to the internal alchemy tradition, where practitioners sought to transform the very substance of consciousness through working with subtle energies. The fingers are antennae through which we both receive and transmit the coded messages of existence. In the Middle East, Sufi mystics developed a system of hand meditation known as Kaf al-Qamar, palm of the moon, which involved focusing consciousness in the center of the palm while in altered states of awareness, often induced through ritual use of cannabis preparations they called hashish al-fatah, the opener of doors. By the 12th century, these traditions had migrated to Europe through various channels: the returning Crusaders, the Moorish influence in Spain, and the Silk Road trade routes. European alchemical texts began to incorporate encoded references to hand energetics, particularly in relation to the quintessence, or fifth element. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, founded in late 19th century England, synthesized many of these traditions in their advanced teachings. In their private manuscripts, they referred to the handprint of God, a system of working with the etheric energies of the hands to perceive beyond ordinary reality. These mystery schools understood something fundamental about human consciousness. Our hands evolved not just for manipulation of physical objects, but as sophisticated instruments of perception and creation. The concentration of nerve endings in our fingertips represents one of the highest densities of sensory receptors in the human body, second only to the lips and tongue. But these nerves serve a dual purpose. They are not merely passive receivers of tactile information, but active conduits for transmitting consciousness itself. This is why so many mystical traditions across cultures emphasize specific hand positions during meditation, prayer, or energy work. What these diverse traditions shared was a common understanding. Between each finger exists invisible lines of force, what modern energy healers might call micro-meridians, or what the ancients termed palmo-chakras, 7 distinct energy centers that can be activated through specific practices. And central to these practices was often a sacred relationship with cannabis, not as a recreational substance, but as a specific technology for amplifying awareness of these subtle energetic processes. To understand the esoteric anatomy of the hand, we must first transcend the conventional anatomical perspective. Beyond flesh, bone, and physical nerve endings lies an intricate network of energy pathways that the Eastern traditions have mapped with remarkable precision. The palmo-chakras, distinct from the 7 major chakras of the body, are concentrated vortices of life force that exist at specific junctions in the palms and fingers. These 7 energy centers correspond not only to physical aspects of our being, but to dimensions of consciousness itself. The first and most foundational palmo-chakra resides at the center of the palm, often called the eye of the hand in Eastern traditions. This central vortex connects directly to the heart chakra through an energy channel that runs along the inner arm. When activated, it creates a distinct sensation of warmth or pressure in the center of the palm. The remaining 6 palmo-chakras are positioned at the junctions between the fingers and at the base of the thumb. Each serves as a gateway for specific frequencies of subtle energy. Between the thumb and index finger lies the gateway of manifestation, connected to our ability to bring intention into physical form. Between the index and middle finger resides the gateway of discernment, our capacity to separate truth from illusion. Between the middle and ring finger exists the gateway of balance, harmonizing opposing forces within our consciousness. Between the ring and little finger sits the gateway of mystery, connecting us to the unseen dimensions. At the base of the thumb lies the gateway of will, our capacity to direct life force intentionally. At the outer edge of the palm rests the gateway of integration, where all energies are synthesized. When cannabis enters this system, a fascinating process unfolds. The psychoactive compounds, particularly THC, interact with the endocannabinoid system, which maintains homeostasis throughout the body. But from an esoteric perspective, cannabis does something more profound. It temporarily adjusts the frequency at which our energy bodies vibrate. The veil between worlds is not torn, but rather becomes momentarily transparent, allowing the seer's hands to perceive what has always been present. This shift in vibratory rate is why many cannabis users report tingling sensations in their hands. What they're experiencing is not merely increased blood flow or nervous system activation, but the awakening of dormant sensory capabilities within the palmo chakras. The ancient Tantric texts describe this process as hasta prabodhana, the awakening of the hands. According to these traditions, cannabis serves as what they called a sadhana dravya, or substance of practice, a tool that, when used with proper intention and protocol, catalyzes specific spiritual capacities. The tingling sensation represents the first stage of activation, what the mystery traditions called the stirring of the serpent. As practice deepens, these sensations evolve from simple tingling to more complex perceptions, subtle vibrations, perceived colors, and eventually direct perception of energy fields surrounding objects and beings. According to the 15th century alchemical text, Palmomancy Unveiled, attributed to the mysterious adept known only as Magister Palmaris, when the green ally enters the temple of the body, the hands become as eyes, seeing not with sight, but with the touch of the unseen. The currents between the fingers become as rivers of living light, and the palm itself a mirror reflecting the hidden nature of all it surveys. The symbolic correspondences of the hand reveal further layers of meaning. In esoteric palmistry, the thumb represents will and conscious intention, the index finger corresponds to identity and direction, the middle finger to balance and integration, the ring finger to creativity and expression, and the little finger to communication and perception. When cannabis activates the energy pathways between these fingers, it creates circuits of perception that integrate these different aspects of consciousness, allowing for a more holistic and multidimensional awareness. But why would such an important spiritual technology be associated with a plant that has been widely prohibited in modern times? The answer lies in understanding the historical pattern of suppressing knowledge that empowers individual direct experience of the divine. Some truths are hidden not because they are too complex to understand, but because they are too powerful to control once understood. The ancient initiates recognized that direct perception, unmediated by priestly hierarchies or institutional authorities, represents both the greatest promise and the greatest threat to established orders. To perceive energy directly is to no longer require intermediaries in one's spiritual journey. This is why many mystery traditions incorporated specific disciplines and ethical preparations before introducing initiates to these practices. The awakening of hand vision was not considered appropriate for everyone at every stage of development. Throughout history, those who mastered the art of hand vision have left accounts of their experiences, though often veiled in symbolic language, to protect these practices from misuse. The Sufi mystic Ibn Arabi described in his private journals how, after ritual cannabis use combined with specific hand meditations, he could read the book of existence with his palms, perceiving the underlying energetic patterns behind physical manifestation. Similarly, the Tibetan yogi Milarepa spoke of achieving hand sight after long periods of meditation with the green helper, likely a reference to cannabis preparations used in certain tantric rituals. He described being able to perceive the threads of karma, connecting all beings, by passing his hands over them without physical contact. In more recent times, energy healers across various traditions have independently rediscovered aspects of this ancient knowledge. Barbara Ann Brennan, a former NASA physicist turned energy healer, has documented the ability to perceive energy fields with the hands after specific training, though her approach does not involve cannabis. Dr. Hiroshi Motoyama, both a Shinto priest and scientist, has used sophisticated equipment to measure electromagnetic changes in the hands of experienced meditators and energy workers, finding measurable differences that correspond to subjective reports of energy perception. Among indigenous cannabis-using cultures from Jamaica to India, there are consistent reports of enhanced energetic sensitivity in the hands. Sadhu holy men in India have long used cannabis preparations called bhang in conjunction with specific mudras, hand postures, to enhance their spiritual practices. One contemporary practitioner, who wished to remain anonymous, described their experience. When I began working with cannabis intentionally in my meditation practice, I first noticed the tingling in my palms. Over months of disciplined practice, this evolved into a distinct sense of seeing with my hands, perceiving colors, textures, and patterns of energy that weren't visible to my physical eyes. I could sense blockages in others' energy fields and often know things about their emotional state that they hadn't expressed. What's particularly noteworthy is the consistency of these reports across cultural and historical boundaries. Whether in ancient China, medieval Persia, or contemporary spiritual communities, the descriptions of palm activation through cannabis share remarkable similarities, suggesting an underlying universal physiology of consciousness that transcends cultural conditioning. The hand that has awakened never returns to sleep. It forever perceives the invisible architecture supporting the visible world. These traditions continue today, preserved in various mystery schools, energy healing modalities, and esoteric communities that maintain the ancient knowledge of chakras while adapting it to contemporary understanding. Barbara Ann Brennan, a former NASA physicist turned energy healer, has documented the ability to perceive energy fields with the hands after specific training, though her approach does not involve cannabis. Dr. Hiroshi Motoyama, both a Shinto priest and scientist, has used sophisticated equipment to measure electromagnetic changes in the hands of experienced meditators and energy workers, finding measurable differences that correspond to subjective reports of energy perception. Among indigenous cannabis-using cultures from Jamaica to India, there are consistent reports of enhanced energetic sensitivity in the hands. Sadhu holy men in India have long used cannabis preparations called bhang in conjunction with specific mudras, hand postures, to enhance their spiritual practices. One contemporary practitioner, who wished to remain anonymous, described their experience. When I began working with cannabis intentionally in my meditation practice, I first noticed the tingling in my palms. Over months of disciplined practice, this evolved into a distinct sense of seeing with my hands, perceiving colors, textures, and patterns of energy that weren't visible to my physical eyes. I could sense blockages in others' energy fields and often know things about their emotional state that they hadn't expressed. What's particularly noteworthy is the consistency of these reports across cultural and historical boundaries. Whether in ancient China, medieval Persia, or contemporary spiritual communities, the descriptions of palm activation through cannabis share remarkable similarities, suggesting an underlying universal physiology of consciousness that transcends cultural conditioning. The hand that has awakened never returns to sleep. It forever perceives the invisible architecture supporting the visible world. These traditions continue today, preserved in various mystery schools, energy healing modalities, and esoteric communities that maintain the ancient knowledge of chakras while adapting it to contemporary understanding. We've journeyed through millennia of hidden knowledge, tracing the threads of a wisdom tradition that recognizes our hands as more than mere appendages, seeing them instead as sophisticated instruments of multidimensional perception. The tingling sensations reported by cannabis users represent not random neural activity, but the first awakening of dormant capacities within the chakras, energetic centers that have been mapped and worked with by mystery traditions across cultures and throughout history. This knowledge invites us to reconsider not only our relationship with sacred plants like cannabis, but with our own bodies as technologies of consciousness. The hands that build our world also have the capacity to perceive its deeper dimensions, to literally feel the unseen currents that animate existence. As we conclude, remember that this knowledge represents merely the outer courtyard of a vast temple of understanding. The true depths of hand vision unfold only through disciplined practice, ethical development, and sincere spiritual inquiry. Between the fingerprints that mark your physical identity lies a map of your spiritual potential, waiting to be deciphered by the light of awakened awareness. What sensations have you noticed in your hands during moments of heightened awareness? What might they be telling you about the subtle dimensions of your own consciousness? The ancient seers would remind us that true wisdom is not merely intellectual understanding, but embodied perception, not just knowing about reality, but developing the capacity to perceive it directly. Join us in our next exploration as we continue unveiling the hidden dimensions of consciousness that lie just beyond the threshold of ordinary perception, accessible not through blind belief, but through the awakening of our natural capacities for direct experience. Until then, may your hands become increasingly sensitive to the subtle currents of existence, and may your journey toward greater awareness be illuminated by the wisdom of those who have walked this path before us.